All right, so we're back with another podcast here. We got Scotty. I think you guys know what the podcast is going to be about with the thing behind the screen there, motivation on empty. So we're going to talk about a lack of motivation. How to deal with a lack of motivation? How do we do that? And this is the perfect day to talk about it because Scott is extremely unmotivated. He has like a drinking weekend or whatever. He's got like a hangover from 2 weeks ago that's still there. So like how do you motivate yourself to grind, or motivate yourself to play more, or motivate yourself to study? Or should we not even be playing that game to begin with? We're going to talk about that in this podcast here. So Scotty, we'll start off with you. We always start off with you. If somebody comes up to you, Scott, off the street, and he's just like, I want to play more poker. I want to study. I want to move up the stakes. I just don't have the motivation, man. I just don't have the motivation. What's like the first thing that comes to your mind when somebody approaches you in that way? It's just like, I just don't have the motivation. I don't have it. The motivation's not there. Do you tell them what?
Well, someone approaches me in the street and asks me about poker. I'm like, how the fuck did you know who I was for a start?
Well, you're a wall thing. You're a famous guy. You know, your face is out there. But let's just say, like, when I say off the street, I mean, let's say you're at a Poker Stars party. All right, let's make it more real. You're at a Poker Stars party. You're at a party poker event. Let's say party poker. You're at a party poker event, and someone's like, "Man, I'm lacking the motivation. I'm just lacking it. I don't know what to do. I can't get myself going." And he's like kind of yelling at you. He's like, "Scott, I can't do it." He's like yelling, you know. How do you? First, you tell him to calm down. I would imagine. You know, hey, calm it down, sir. Take it easy. We're going to talk about it in a minute.
Say it, don't spray it for a start. Secondly, let's go find somewhere quiet and have a chat. Okay. To be quite truthful, I think the first thing that I don't think that there's a one-size-fits-all approach for fixing motivation leaks in people. And kind of like we talked about last week, I think I made my feelings very clear about motivation last week. I'm very much indoctrinated by the motivation myth. You know, I don't necessarily tap into the idea that you have to generate motivation because it is so short-lived. And you know, like you, for example, you told me to read Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth. And I find that when I started listening to that a couple of days ago, and then I find when I listen to that, I get really motivated to start like working on myself. Like I get these like personal development sort of inspiration surges, and it dissipates so quickly, right? Yeah. And so I found that in order to, because for example, when I read something like A New Earth, I feel very zen for the next couple of hours afterwards. I'm sure this is exactly how you feel as well, Boston. I feel super zen afterwards. If I listen to a lecture by Alan Watts, I just feel like really just philosophical and easygoing. And when I watch videos about stoicism, I find myself not caring too much about my life problems. But then what will happen, or what used to happen to me, was that I would listen to these things in clusters. I would like binge on it almost, you know?
Okay.
And I would binge and feel super motivated, and I would have like 3 or 4 days where I just listened to it, you know, where I just spent all day working on personal development. And then I would stop for a few days, the motivation would run out, and then I'd just revert almost right back to where I was before. More wise and more knowledgeable, but not exactly more fulfilled or more zen, which is what I was looking for. So the first thing that I would say to someone who accosted me at a party poker event and shouted in my face.
You got harassed.
Yeah, exactly. The first thing that I would suggest to them, much to the similar effect as what we spoke about last time, would be, well, could you show me your schedule? And I think that would answer a lot of questions immediately, because either they're going to show me one or they're not. And straight away we have a good insight into the habits of this person. If they say, I don't have a schedule, the first thing I'll say is, you need to create one, right? And if they haven't created one, the first advice that I would give them is to make a really, really simplified schedule. And this is I have had problems with this my whole life. Anyone who knows me knows I'm just inherently so disorganized, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that you can't necessarily say that about yourself, like, oh, I am disorganized, like it's a part of me, or I am, but I have always struggled to maintain organization. I miss messages all the time, like, my Skype game is lazy. My scheduling has always been poor. My timekeeping is fucking abysmal. So bad. I'm the worst timekeeper I've ever met.
I'll bet money that one of your parents is that way as well.
My dad is kind of a chaotic dude too. Like,
okay.
That's
where you get it from, by the way. You saw that your whole life. There's like, it just naturally happens. You're just like that way now, Just kind of interesting, but yeah.
Structure wasn't really a thing within my family. Like, I confess that kind of collectively we were always kind of hoarders as well. We held on to items for too long, like, and we would bags of stuff around the house. Like, we're just quite a cluttered family in general, and that's the environment I grew up in, and it's certainly that I've unfortunately taken into my adult life. One thing I will say is I've recently been focusing a lot on minimalism, and I'm like really kind of fixated at the moment on reducing the amount of things that I have, the amount of sort of white noise in my life. But I've always struggled with scheduling, and one of the things that you know very well that I've done is I would then develop a schedule, and this schedule would be planned to the fucking minute of every single day, where I had 90 minutes to go to the gym.
From no schedule to every single minute of the day is planned. That's one way to zero town.
like Charlie Sheen, man, another fucking meme, just like Shia LaBeouf, like Charlie Sheen, I have one gear, man, go. It's either on or off with the scheduling.
Let's talk about that. How did that work out for you? From zero structure to I'm going to plan every single minute of my day.
I would argue that the latter was almost worse, to be honest. Like,
okay. Elaborate on that.
I will, yeah. Because there's failure involved in the second one. So at least in the first one where I was freestyling it, there was no failure involved. Like, I was consistently disappointed with my output, but at least I hadn't missed any goals, right? So when I started creating schedules, and they were so finite and also ridiculous, by the way, like I don't know what kind of fucking superhuman I thought that I was. But I gave myself practically no time to just to just be, and sometimes your words just ring in my head, Jack. When you say need to take some time to be a human being, not a human doing. And my schedule was basically 7 days a week, like 11 hours of work, like doing and never being. And that's with a wife and kids as well. So totally unsustainable, would create these schedules, would ultimately fail to stick with them and then abandon them. I reckon I've created, over the last 5 years, upwards of 100 schedules in calendars, in Google spreadsheets, and using the Google Calendar, and I've had multiple different apps. And I finally, in the last few months, managed to solve this problem. So I had, at least for the last 3 years, I have always managed to get to work around 9 or 10 and finish around 3 or 4. I fluctuated between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. I've gone back and forth. My bedtime's stayed somewhat consistent within like a 2-hour window, and my wake up time the same. And I've become much better at scheduling. So the first thing I would say to this person who's screaming in my face like a fucking banshee, I would say, calm down, please. And secondly, show me your schedule. If they don't have one, I'd say, okay, you need to create one. And what you need to do is you need to make it achievable. We've talked about this a lot. Make it achievable. Make it so you will struggle to fail. So 4 or 5 hours grinding a day, and pick that time window. And when you create this schedule, just try and minimize the amount of things that you put in the schedule. And this is that a lot of people like myself go from 0 to 100, and they just include all this complexity. They're like, right, I don't go to the gym. I want to go to the gym. I'm going to go 6 times a week, do 90 minutes. I'm going to do 1,000 fucking cable pulls and 200 bicep curls. And there's so much detail that it's impossible to maintain. So the first thing I would say is make a schedule and put like 3 things in it. Okay. Grinding, not grinding, and maybe gym or studying or something like that. Right. But just make it bite size, easy to remember, easy to achieve. Okay. And you build from there. So you say, I'm going to grind 4 hours a day, 5 or 6 days a week, and then you hit that target. When you hit that target, then you look at expanding. Or you give yourself, for example, an hour window after you finish to just relax before you go to bed or whatever. And maybe you can start eating into that window of relaxation afterwards. So you can extend your grind time afterwards if you still feel like grinding, which is, I think, the biggest problem. I think this is a good point for you to take over, Jack, but I think the biggest problem for people is not the staying, it's the getting there. It's the starting the grind that they cannot do.
Yeah.
And so if you make a schedule that is nice and simple to begin, where you don't dread going to work, building on what I said last week, do you remember I said, oh, fuck, I've got to go grind. Like, yeah, I do always kind of get that feeling, but I'm going to grind like 6 hours, not 12. And so I'm like, okay, I can make that. And then, of course, sometimes I stay longer. Yes, but I suppose I'll get your thoughts on, getting going.
Yeah, the getting going. If some maniac came to me at a party poker, party and started spitting in my face about motivation, the first thing that would come to mind for me is immediately to tell them not to play that game to begin with. I would get into the scheduling thing too. Obviously, bite-sized schedule. We all have had experiences where you get this surge of motivation and you think you're Superman for a little bit. I've had moments in my life as well where your motivation's on full. I remember I came back from a Tony Robbins seminar and I was so motivated. I can't even words wouldn't even describe it. I'm like, you know what? What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna play poker for 12 hours a day, and every second that I'm not playing poker, I'm gonna be reading audiobooks. I'm not gonna watch TV again. I had all these things, literally, I was going insane. I'm like, I'm gonna sleep now 6 hours per night. I swear, I had it all planned. I'm gonna sleep 6 hours per night. I'm gonna read 3 to 4 hours of audiobooks per day. Every other second, I'm gonna be playing poker and just eating, and then that's it. I'm like, I'm gonna do this for a couple of years. There's gonna be no problem. I was so motivated. I did this for 2 weeks, and man, I was so burnt out. I can't even you see your motivation thing on E. That's exactly where I was. I was on complete empty, and so what happened was, it's kind of like Scott's story. I went from 100 to 0 quick. I was dead. I was like, I need to take a break from reading audio. I need to take a break from everything. And it also brings to mind, I know you remember this, Scott, when you made that perfect looking pregame routine video or whatever. And I remember I told you, Scott, I was like, this is perfect looking, but nobody's going to do this. I promise you. Nobody's going to do this, including yourself. But at that time, you wouldn't believe it because why? Your motivation was on full. You had a full tank and you were like, I'm going to do this. This is what's going to happen. This is what we need to succeed. But realistically, the main point being this, and you said it, Scott, in that speech you just gave a minute ago. If there's too much dread, it's going to be hard to get yourself to do something. So when there's too much dread is if you put your schedule down, I'm going to grind 10 hours today or something that just sounds like so much to you. And you're just like, oh, that's just so much. You're like, oh, you're dreading it. So if you're lacking in motivation, here's the advice I would give. I would say you have to, first of all, not rely on motivation to play poker or do anything for that matter, including going to the gym and simple things like that. So what do I mean by that? Someone's like, wait a second, but if I don't have motivation, then how do I do it?